Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Dans mes coupes, on y a assez près. En histoire, vous êtes un pays qui cache avec tout le monde. Aïe, 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 c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Dans mes couches,
On écoute le son, fait des larmes. On y voit les tangos sur les bananes.
aïe, 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 c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Dans mes couches, on est la mazette, à son côté. On est la mer caribéenne qui toujours calme. Aïe, 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 c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Dans mes coupons,
On dit de repasser, yes les autres côtés. C'est le picado, nous ça passe à replacer.
aïe, 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 c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Dans mes moutons, on va ni la guerre. Dans les autres côtés, on y a dans sa famille belle et plaisant. Aïe, 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 c'est un paradis. Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Merci mon Dieu, pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Il pas ni rien qui coupe ça.
Pas ni rien plus belle que ça.
Merci mon Dieu.
Chega com a babá, fácil, fácil. Você tá louca.
Aqui tem o quadro me
Yes, hereafter you will live on in the sun, the wind and rain, French, Caribbean, African.
boys are going. Her curly ringlets have their eyes are going. Each time she passes, you can hear them whisper. Sure, she's a jewel that my heart is after. Her walks so swaying makes my heart much lighter. Her eyes so gleaming makes my heart much faster. Oh, how I wish she'd watch me a bit longer. I'd love to get her to weep upon my shoulder. I'll be the mixer. No more of longing and no more of bleeding. If she would only give me up her hearing. On most she wanders, afterwards up yonder. All around the smiling is all of nature's wonder. I feel a mixer, I live my up in Timuma. Ay, 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 I'm gonna let her put to town. She's a gift of nature.
Ay, 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 say a power.
besa.
Ibani ayeki kubesa.
Ibani ayeki besa.
Merci mon Dieu.
Not hearing you.
Hi, good evening everyone.
Yeah, you got it.
Good evening, Zed. How are you?
Good evening, brother. Good evening. I hear you clearly.
Alright, very well. Alright, Zed, I think I'm hearing some talking in your background.
Yeah, that's that big one.
Alright, good.
Did you tag me on the Facebook post?
Yes, you are on. We are live. Let me say good evening to all followers. Today is 21st of March, 2021. I said we are happy to be in the land
of the living.
We are happy to be in the land of the living.
Give thanks and praise.
All the time, my brother, we have to give thanks and praise. Because we are here, we can walk, we can talk, we can laugh.
And that's a blessing.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing. Because there are many who cannot smile like you said.
Josh, I'm not seeing the program on your page yet, you know. I can't get it to share it yet.
All right. Well, you need to go on my page.
I actually went there.
And you should be able to see it. I am seeing it. It's here. Eventually to emerge on your page, but it is on my page.
All right. I'll wait for it then.
All right. So I was saying we have to be thankful and grateful for another day, right?
Yeah.
A day that God has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
And give thanks always.
Always. You remember the songs when you were at elementary school? You sang all the gospel songs, you know. So
I remember a whole lot of them at SMA.
Right, right. Do you want to share? Do you want to share one with the public?
I don't know about that. I was the worst participant. I like the conversation, but I was an acolyte too.
Right. So it means that you're supposed to know a number of songs.
Boy, Josh, boy, I stopped going to church. I stopped going to church about 1990.
And you resume this year, right?
I go now. I go to funerals, and now and then I accept an invitation to go to a church in the city or somewhere. I'm not anti-God, so I have no problem entering the church, but I just haven't been a church-going guy.
All right, but you're getting there. You're going back. Get there, man. Zen Lloyd.
God loving, God loving. God loving. I have a problem with the God fearing thing.
Yeah, God loves you, Zed.
Yeah, I know, man.
You are here because the Lord loves you.
Yeah, it's cool.
Right.
I'm just trying to be a God vessel, man. I'm trying my best,
And you're doing well.
Yeah. So how was your week, brother?
My week was good. It was good. What about yours?
I was preparing some paperwork, helping a friend or two with some papers. So it was kind of a quiet week.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. You got some things done.
Yeah. Not for other folks than myself, but it was, sometimes that's what it is. You know what I mean?
All right. Nice.
Yeah.
I guess that's the essence of Christianity, doing for others.
Yeah, well, that is why I accept the Christ paradigm. I think it's an awesome paradigm. I think it's good to serve and to forgive and love.
All right. And when you take your time to do for others, basically you are fulfilling one of God's commandments to love another.
Real talk.
You only share love, or you only actually practice love when you do something for another person. And greater love is at your greater expense. And that's why it says the greatest gift you can give your friend is to lay your life for him or her.
Yeah, real talk.
And it's not always dying physically, but it's about giving your time, your finances, your resources.
Yeah, especially in this season of Lent, and what it really means. I wish more believers, Josh, would put themselves on the cross, mentally, and instead of just seeing, the Christ on the cross, I wish we would bring the message into our lives, in a more personal way.
Yeah, in a more personal and practical way.
Yeah, like do your 40 days and your 40 nights,
And out of that 40 days and 40 nights, you come out with a more positive spirit.
Yeah. Well, that is what it was, Josh. That is what it was. Those things were mediums to keep us recharged and to keep us on the holy path and to keep us focused on the righteous, and that's what they were. We have our own faults. We don't have 7 faults, but we have our own faults. There are times when we have our Judas moments. There are times when we have our feet nailed on the cross. All those things are in our lives. And so I wish Christians would use the Lent more from a personal perspective than just being focused on the cross. I think an opportunity is lost in the way we utilize Lent.
Yeah, well, a lot of us. Yeah, because as the good book says, a lot of us are following the law, and as the Christ, we're studying the Bible, but it seems we never come to learning.
Yeah, yeah.
The
teaching too, George. The teaching too is what makes it hard. The teaching is also making it harder.
Yeah.
The teaching too. I think even the pastors and the priests need some time to humble themselves and really recheck the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Zed, this evening we're practicing a form of Christianity by being here and doing it at the expense of our time.
Yeah, yeah. And as long as it's for the people, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, because that is what it's all about. The good book says it's better to give than to receive.
Yeah, yeah. And you do receive, without even asking for it when you give, You do receive.
Yeah.
I man, the last few months, man, I've had some angels in my life that, it just come from nowhere,
Right.
And I may not be able to be an angel to them, but I can be an angel to others,
And that is the right attitude, because the givers, the people who give may not be present for you to give back.
Yeah.
Spiritually, you are to give back to another.
Yeah.
That may just be a stranger. So you were a stranger or are a stranger to the people who gave you. And likewise, you could give to a stranger too, because the wrong should go around as far as good deeds are concerned.
That's how the godness works. That's why I rather, George, lately I've been talking more about goodness than God. I think we need to focus on the verb,
That's an interesting.
Yeah, I think we need to focus on the verb.
Yeah, well, we just have to aspire to be better people and to learn from mistakes and understand that life is fickle. We're just like vapor.
Yeah.
We're here just for a short time. So we take our time to do good than to do bad.
Yeah. And that's why we have to use the time. That's why we have to be urgent about goodness. We have to be urgent about it, because and there's a paradigm out there, George, that I'm very troubled by, this idea of waiting on God. I think it's something that we need to revisit and really think about what it means, because I think we need to be more urgent about doing the righteous things. Yeah.
Well, that is how we separate ourselves from non-believers. If you proclaim Christian, you are to live the life of a Christian. Like when you proclaim to be a Buddhist, you live the life of a Buddhist. Proclaim to be a Muslim, likewise, you live the life of Islam. If you're a Rasta man, you believe in Haile Selassie, he's your teacher, you study his codes, then you live by those codes.
Yeah.
The faith that you have, you are real to your faith when you actually practice what you learn and you
Exactly. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, let me just recognize a few persons who have joined us thus far. We have Chris Bugunu, says he's locked in. And he actually says, that's right, brother Zed. Jesus loves you dearly. And Kevin Mills, welcome, Mr. Mills. Police officer, he says there's a feedback from Zed's audio.
Oh.
And we're also joined by our patriot sister, Marceline Edwards. Good evening, Marceline. I hope you're doing well. I hope your family is doing well. Always on the platform advocating and agitating for a better Dominica. And we have Sylvie. Good night. So Zed, we already have a few followers. We want to recognize them.
Yes.
For joining us. Yeah, this is a platform of Contending for Dominica. It's a non-partisan platform, really. People may say, Joshua Francis, that's UWP. Zed Lloyd, Loopy.
we trying to be objective and broaden the plate, you know.
Right. I see that Marston Edwards has suggested that you put your phone on silence.
Yeah, I think I just did that.
Right.
It sounds better.
Right. And we have Lofty Dura, who has just joined us. Looking forward to a great discussion as usual. Of course, Lofty himself is a facilitator of great discussions and usually is a participant as well.
Yes.
So we're happy to have him here. And I see Clevin Mills is saying Marceline is the only patriot on the feed. No, Clevin Mills, if you consider yourself to be a patriot, we accept that. He's a patriot. Lofty is a patriot.
And Mills himself should be a patriot.
Yes, yes. Patriots do not always share the same platform.
Exactly.
Ideology, but patriotism rests on love for country. And love for country means that you stand up for what is right. And in Bill's opinion, he's standing for what is right. We have different opinions, but he's a fairly good man. He has his ways, but at least unlike some other persons who support the Dominican Labour Party, he finds a way to interact with non-supporters of the Dominican Labour Party. And that is commendable by itself.
Yeah.
He is an example of what I know you would like, Zed. People who share different views, but nonetheless stand for country.
Yeah, that's why I went on his program, actually. I think, you know, yes, he made, you know, his points, I don't agree with them all the time, but I think the willingness to engage is where it's at, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Zed, of course, we have been at an introductory and embryonic part of the program. Tonight really is an open program. We're going to focus on the country as far as the economy, the latest developments. We discussed the CCJ case in respect to jurisdiction last week. We also touched on the CBI, which is an unfolding huge topic. And I would like to get your views on the CBI. We're going to talk about it because I believe it is very important that those of us who understand what is happening with the CBI program should go out there to enlighten the nation. I do not want to say educate, I want to say enlighten. You know, because sometimes when we say we desire to educate people, we come across like we want to pontificate, we want to inculcate. And I do not want to come across as somebody who wants to indoctrinate anyone. I am more of a facilitator. Otherwise, I want to be a bringer of knowledge. And when other people receive the knowledge, they will assess it, cogitate it, and make the right decisions.
Exactly, Josh. I'm glad you made that observation. Yesterday, we had a program talking about consciousness, you know, and raising of consciousness and the solution path. And I think that's what Dominica needs. So we have to facilitate that, you know. So it's not about trying to be arrogant to people like we know it all. I think it's a two-way conversation. And but we have to start it, you know. We have to start it.
Well, definitely. The conversation has been around. But those who have been having the conversation, hoping to make that much needed change in Dominica, we have to assess the mode of transporting our information. We have to look at the way we package our information.
Exactly.
We have to look at the messengers themselves, because sometimes you may have a very well packaged piece of information, but if you as a messenger turn off the people, they're not going to listen to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially in our jurisdiction where people are probably more emotional than rational. So
not probably. Not probably.
Right. You know, I do not want to come across as being insolent to the people of Dominica. Yeah, I do not want to be like our prime minister who referred to some Dominicans as idiots.
Yeah.
And his mouthpiece continuously referred to people as cockroaches.
Yeah.
You know, refer to people as some kind of bad way, you know, use some terrible adjectives.
Yeah.
So that is why I didn't want to go down the road of by saying, well, the people are more emotional than rational. That is kind of condescending. And that is not my nature. I believe that people have different intellectual skills, different intellectual gifts. And I don't think I am going to make myself higher than anybody. So I am not going to refer to people as being more emotional and rational, because there's something referred to as emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And emotional reasoning is a form of rationality. It's just not.
Yeah, it has its place. It has its place. But when it becomes the norm, we have a problem, you know?
Right.
Yeah, when it becomes the norm. But we just have to work with it. We just have to talk with the people, man. I think there's a talking down to the people, which is not the right approach. We just have to talk with the people.
Right.
And that's why, George, I sometimes come down a little hard on you too, and I'm happy you're here this evening. I'm happy you're launching this platform a little. I'm seriously and trying to keep it going. Because I think, like you say, some of us have certain things that not everyone else has, you know? And the capacity to be compassionate is very important in bringing information to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want you to be aware of that combination of skills that is natural to you and places you in a very critical position to be a conduit, you know, towards meeting and talking and enlightening the people and understanding them in return also. You know, you know, we have to use what God has given us.
Well, definitely, Zed, and that, and I'm honored for your recognition.
Yeah.
So I feel that I don't need to do that. You know, look at Sunday evening, a few hours before I return to work, and I'm like, why do I have to do this? But somebody has to do it. We must have the conversations.
Yeah.
And we must lead. We must help our brothers. The same thing we were saying earlier. We must be sacrificial lambs. We cannot be subdued and not agitate when we are seeing that we're in a situation where we need more agitation.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Constructive agitation too.
Right. Because if we do not do that, Zed, it means the status quo may cause a worsening of the economic, social, spiritual, and every other important aspect of society into decadence.
Yes.
And we do not want that. We want a better Dominica.
Yeah.
And in that analysis, within that discussion, when we put everything under the scope, we cannot say all is bad. We would not be fair, and we cannot say that
agreed.
The system has not done anything good. You know?
And you know, Josh, that is a very important point you made, you know, because that has been part of what has led to the polarization, you know, the extremeness of points of views, you know. Right. The unwillingness to say when one who is against you does something good. The unwillingness to acknowledge, you know, when acts of goodness are done. It doesn't matter what side. I think that has been part of what has been keeping the vibes from crossing the line, because if you're going to be doing the same thing over and over, after a while people tune out of it, you know. People tend to stick with things that make more sense, that are more logical, that are more real, that are more appropriate, that if this is right, say it is right. If this is wrong, say it is wrong. I think that's what we need to bring back into the place, you know, so more people can listen to people that they don't agree with, you know.
Right. But that comes with intellectual maturity.
Yeah.
Well, probably if all of us were spiritually mature, then we would not have to even care about the intellectual maturity. But with secularization, less people have fear of God, less people go into church, and even when we go to church, we don't seem to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
And our level of tolerance is less, our level of bias is more, and with the type of politicians we have at the lead, more so and I want to specify, more so the Dominican Labour Party, has the majority, and out of political science, they strategize how to keep that majority. And in that strategy, it encourages tribalism and division, because when they speak to their base. They
Yeah.
up, they energize it, they weaponize it, not realizing that it comes to the detriment of the nation and the national identity, which seem to have been lost in Dominica. And that is one of the things that I would like us to really examine. Because Zed, when you hear about national development now, we seem to just crunch the numbers. We just, we talk about, national income, what we're exporting versus what we could export, corruption in government. But in terms of national identity, what are we really standing for? When you look at the global context and you talk about Dominica, what makes Dominica stand out? It's just the notion that we have 365 rivers. I mean, what makes Dominica stand out? And I think we need to take the conversation to that level at some point. But there are more immediate issues. And I see Clevin Mills wants to help us. He wants to guide our program.
That's him. That's him. This guy's no joke.
Yeah, I mean, we have not even really touched on the topic of the CBI. We said we're about it, but Clevin has gone ahead of us. Because he's older, he has to go, a few miles ahead of us.
Yeah.
To get to the finish line. So should we start on the same?
You can't help yourself. This guy's no joke, man.
Yeah, and Marceline, of course, said that she's doing well. She's always looking towards our program, and we are grateful. Marceline herself hosts her program on Facebook and YouTube, and sometimes I do make time to listen to her.
Yeah.
My sister, and always fired up. Unlike many of us, after the last general election, we got dejected, and some of us actually hung up our political boots.
Yeah.
This is like Marceline, resilient and consistent.
She's a lioness.
For a better country, And what I like about Marceline and several other persons is that they're not out there pushing a party agenda first. They're out there pushing a national agenda.
Yeah, man, Dominica, that's the winnable agenda. That's the winnable agenda. I quite frankly, the results of an election don't bother me. If everybody's involved and it's fair and it's genuine, Yeah, I'm willing to accept the voice of the people, But it needs to be in a free environment, in a non-suppressive. It needs to be, free press and, proper financial regulations and those things.
Right. No, you just made a point, and you said that the result didn't really bother you. I mean, before we go into the CBI, probably we should just touch a little on the last general election and the way forward.
Yeah.
Unlike you were involved, but I was even more involved.
Yeah.
The candidates, I was at the thick of the political process. And when I speak about the electioneering or the election process in Dominica, I'm not just speaking as an academic, but as a participant.
Exactly.
In as much as we respect the voice of the people, we honor it, we respect it, and we are not trying to destabilize the system because we have the notion that the decision was wrong or it was forced on the people. Nonetheless, we have to acknowledge the wrongs that went on in the last election. And many of us are hoping that the next election to come, we will not have so many wrongs, irregularities and illegalities, and just the thinking of corruption. Because one thing to have corruption is also another thing to think there's corruption. And in Dominica, we are beyond just thinking. We know that there have been corruption.
Well, Josh, it's good you jump out from there, because my worry about the next election, if we don't get things done, is because it was so exposed and glaring in the last election that it won't be that kind of glaring corruption next election. I think right now the corruption is taking place long before the election. Through the whole housing scheme, where the homes are placed, what villages they're placed in. There is a whole restructuring of voters taking place around Dominica in anticipation of that next election through that whole housing scheme thing going on in Dominica.
Well, Zed, you just raised a very salient point, and I want to expand on it.
Yes.
Basically, in essence, you're saying that the incumbent government is machinating an election campaign.
Yes.
The distribution of the houses, the construction of the smart clinics, and so on and so forth, basically feeds to the nation to seduce them or seduce us to support the incumbent. So
yes.
The campaign continues, but it's in a subtle way. It is not direct as during the election campaign itself. But the politicians, the executive, the Dominica Labour Party government continues to do what it has to do to maintain its legacy in government.
Yes.
So whilst an ordinary person celebrates the receipt of an apartment, the politician who helps him obtain it is not looking at it the way he's looking at it, because he's saying, but my government loves me. The Dominica Labour Party loves me. The Labour Party loves me so much. But he's not realizing this is not about love. This is about science. This is about political science, where a government, knowing that a lot of people are in economic trouble, it gives those hands hoping that these beneficiaries, these recipients, will have eternal loyalty to them.
Yeah.
I spoke about how that is affecting the demographics of Dominica, because you have apartments being shared in different parts of the island. And most of the recipients are poor people's children. And the Labour Party thinks that by giving somebody, a poor person, an apartment, that person, whether he or she was a Labour supporter or not, that loyalty will be given to the Dominica Labour Party until death. And beyond that, the children of that recipient will support the Dominica Labour Party forever. So it's come up building a garrison of supporters. So it's a systematic thing. And you raise an important question, because at the end of the day, the opposition, what are they thinking? How do you strategize around that reality?
Yeah. You almost practically, that's why I was saying earlier on, the last resort we have against those things is massive conversation and education, It really is, because you already don't have the resources to compete with those things. But when you look at it, you can see it. You go to a village, you build a certain number of houses, and those houses are not even for people in the village. So what you're doing is a translocation of voters to a constituency. You know what I'm saying? Your numbers are worked out. You know what you need to win. You know what? I mean, we can do the mathematics, and it's plain as day. So I just hope people understand that. So this government understands it will not be able to do the glaring things that it did anymore in electoral processes. So it's now taken care of on the ground in a particular way to ensure that even if the things appear to be just on the ground, the corruption has already been implemented in a much more strategic manner.
Right. And it's interesting that you make those points. And on that point, let me just acknowledge the comments here of Artisan Lovey, usually follows us. I just want to say good evening, hoping that all is well with him. I'm clever, Mr. Labor is working. We're going to get back to Mr. Mills. Clever Mills will be back. Says, do you think people will ever think Dominica will have a fair election under the DLP with top brass balls hanging somewhere in futuristic jail? Reggie Thomas, it's about helping the less unfortunate. I guess Reggie is responding to this housing program, which we're going to discuss a little bit. We're going to look at it from a contractual perspective and the legality of the arrangement between the MMC and the government of Dominica. As I said, Cleville has gone ahead of us, but we'll be back, Cleville. Cleville says you're wrong premise. You are alleging criminal conduct for no evidence. I'm not too sure exactly what Cleville is responding to. You can see the here. Cleville probably has some, Facebook handcuffs and they just arrest us tonight, Zed. We better be.
You might have to call for a lawyer, Josh.
You already have suspicion of we committing a criminal offense. He said we have no evidence of the alleging a criminal conduct.
That's Mills, man. He knows what we're saying is true.
Right.
And it's very serious, man. And that's why, like I say, we have to talk about those things. Because if we don't talk about them, the people who need the eye opening, they're not going to get that eye opening. I have nothing against the government building homes for Dominican people. I would love to see that they be given the keys like Patrick John did back in his day as soon as they enter their home, and they be given their deeds and their certificate of ownership. That's what I would love to see. And it's actually theirs.
Right.
You know, that would be awesome. But the very fact that the Prime Minister cannot execute that in the initial stages of handing the apartments over is proof that there is something not kosher with this process of building homes for Dominica.
Well, Sam, you raised an important point, and I want to support what you said as far as you don't have a problem with ordinary Dominicans, particularly poor people's children, getting apartments from the Dominican Labour Party. So that is not the issue, because as far as I'm concerned, we should eradicate poverty in Dominica.
Exactly.
Nobody should be going without food, clothing, shelter, recreation, medical care, amongst other things in the Commonwealth of Dominica. So I'm not even talking about reducing poverty, which normally is the capture of the United Nations, the IMF. I'm going beyond that. We do not want to reduce poverty. We want to eradicate poverty.
Eradicate that.
After all, this is a small country. This is not 70 million people. You're looking at about 70,000 people. And no Dominican should be without money, should be without food and proper shelter. So clearly, Zed, like you, I am in favor of people getting apartments, especially people who have been financially destroyed. Because at 50 years, you can afford an apartment. You can even rent. You have to be with your parents.
Yeah.
Come to the rescue, the government gives you an apartment. That's understandable, because who's going to give you a mortgage? You're 55, you don't even have a proper job. Who's going to give you a mortgage to build?
Yeah, it's real. It's real. But the empowerment should be a complete empowerment. You know, give them their certificate of title, give them their thing, build the homes in a way where they have a little plot around their house that they can plant some food, you know, that they can at least feel a sense of individual ownership, have more pride in it, expand on it later with a little loan from the bank so they can make an extra room, maybe they can rent it to some stranger. You know,
right.
the way the government functions, even these social programs, there is no empowerment to it.
Well,
there is no empowerment.
Zed, probably all that is part of the political strategy, because if if you empower a man intellectually, financially, and otherwise, it means that you are making a man independent. And his independence is not just financial, because money is power. And when a man is financially independent, most times he's mentally independent. He feels that he does not have to depend on a politician to get the next bread. And because he's financially independent and he is mentally independent, he can decide who he wants to support. So he does not feel obliged to support Roosevelt's carrots, because he's independent. But when a man has to get an apartment from a government, his children have to depend on scholarships to attain university education. When a member of the family is unwell, that family has to run to the financial center to obtain assistance to send that loved one to Martinique or Guadeloupe or the United States. Clearly, Zed, you understand why this government is really not interested in individual empowerment.
True. But Josh, I'm worried about the other side, the response. And I'll give you an example. This last week in Dominica, what has been the main thing? Pampalam. And, and by and large, everybody has focused on the education minister. And we have not taken time to address the real problem. You know, the real problem is not the education minister. You see, the real problem is the mannerism that our scholarship is being addressed right now. It is a wrong protocol. And
Right.
that's what we should be gathering citizens around collectively, constructively, even not going so much pampala might enable us to bring some more people to the table. You know, we have to make the conversation a lot more philosophical than that personal kind of response to the
Right.
situation in Dominica. It doesn't. We do not arrive at a solution because of the way we react to the problems. You know, and so I think this is an opportunity that's been lost on the radio for the last 2 weeks. This Pampalam thing to have the real conversation. The real conversation that our scholarship program should return to the protocol it followed when Mamo was there, for instance. Where we have budgetary assessments for scholarship. If it's 5 we can give, it's 5 we can give. If it's 5 million, we can put NDB to give people 0% interest loans or whatever, or 1% or 0.5%. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how we can circumvent this madness that the leadership, there's no reason why Roosevelt Skelly, as a leader of the country, should be dealing personally on telephones with people seeking scholarship from the government. No reason.
Well, there ought not to be any reason, but I can punctuate a reason. And the reason is Roosevelt Skelly seeks personal glorification.
Yeah.
He wants to take the credit. He wants to be the demigod. He wants to be the source of the national's lifeblood. You need help, turn to Roosevelt Skelly. When you get that help, you are to honor this gentleman all the days of your life. And you are to honor him without fear and without favor. So even when he's wrong, you have to find a way to cover him. And your point is well taken. However, we have to understand the realities of Dominica's idiosyncrasies. As we said earlier, people are probably more emotional and less rational. So, for example, the Pampalarism, Pampalam, you would have thought it would have gone deeper beyond just this Pampalam thing, and people look at the scholarship scheme and note that the institutionalization of funding education at tertiary level has changed in Dominica. Instead of going for a process, you know, just call up your prime minister and say, hey, Tommy is turning 17. She's graduating from Dominica State College next month. I need a scholarship to send her to Mexico. And then the PM will say, well, just for the records, send in the application. But the application is not what's going to determine whether that person obtains the scholarship or not. A matter of fact, a lot of times the prime minister would have already given a commitment to that person, say, yeah, you get that scholarship, but just do X, Y, and Z for me.
Yeah.
So there isn't any meritocratic process through which the application goes through in determination of who gets the scholarship. It's all political now.
Yeah. This sucks, man. It sucks because what it does, it's creating a cadre of intellects that have no intellectual independence.
Yeah.
No, we get it, like I said, we get lawyers coming back home, George, and they've graduated and they haven't even realized that they're empowered with a legal degree. Well, it all comes from that relationship of how they get their education funded. They are so in the process of suppression mentally of independent mindedness that even after they've graduated, they do not even realize the empowerment that they have been given by that scholarship.
Well, yeah, you talk about a scholarship, but generally what is happening is that we are becoming more and more vacuous.
Good.
More, we are losing ideologies. So for example, you may have an ideology. You do have an ideology based on your posturing in the public. But a lot of us do not have an ideology. We do not have a philosophy. We really don't stand for anything. Even when we proclaim to be Christians, we do not stand for Jesus.
True.
Far less for us to follow the precepts of Paul Bogle or Marcus Garvey or Nelson Mandela. We sometimes give voice to the names of these great men, but follow them. So we live in a society where we are very superficial, we are transactional, we have become just as a commercial commodity ourselves because we just see the dollar sign. We just
Yeah.
sign and we believe in immediate gratification. It's about what we can get now. So with that kind of attitude, you have savvy or clever politicians who are corrupt, using monies and the state resources to advantage us. And that's what's happening in Dominica. Because this Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit is hailed as one of the best politicians, not just in Dominica, but in the Caribbean. Now, what has made him such a great politician? What about him that has caused people to say that he's a great politician, when in fact, his record has shown that Dominica has not developed as quickly as its neighbors? Yes, we're not denying that we have better roads. We are happy to have better roads to drive from Marigot to Roseau. We're happy to have better roads on the West Coast. But yes, while we celebrate these things, St. Lucia has had better roads since 20 years ago. So whilst we talk about 4 hotels being built in Portsmouth and all of a sudden there's going to be a revolution in tourism in Dominica, St. Lucia did that 30 years ago. St. Vincent, which was by far the poorest country in the Eastern Caribbean in the 70s and 80s and 90s, has left us behind.
Yeah, way behind.
Right, so when you come in with your argument that Roosevelt Skerrit is some kind of great politician, he has done so well, he gave road. And in the metrics then, most of these things we just spoke about, where did they come from? China.
You know, man, Josh boy, I tell you, man, it's you know, it hurts me. I'm really trying to get home because I think we need more people on the ground that can, you know, make the time to talk to the people, and because I still think that's what's missing. I applaud folks like Lofty and yourself and others who are making the time, but I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. You know, struggle work is a very hard work. But I think right now the people are being taken advantage of in Dominica, Josh. It's not even like just a thing of corruption. People are just being taken advantage of. And even labor rights, the system has gotten disadvantages to them. It's not like to say you have a majority of people in Dominica who are labor rights and the government is really taking care of labor rights, you know, advancing their lives and making their lives better. That is not even the case. That's what's sad. In all of this thing that we talk about Roosevelt and the amassing of wealth and the value that he's given as a prime minister and his value economically, you know, from what he's worked for, I don't understand where that value comes from. But I would understand if at least labor rights in Dominica were having an advantage economically, socially, in their lives, really improving their lives, really going somewhere. But that is not even the case for labor rights who support the Dominica Labour Party. You know, so that to me, it's advantageous. And we need to, like I say, the reaction by the people who are against what is going on is part of the problem. There is no, people don't study the problem in addressing it. They just react to it. And the reaction, Roosevelt Skerrit always wins. Because why? Everybody listens to Roosevelt Skerrit and then they speak. Nobody has him backpedaling. He says, come into the ring. Everybody goes into the ring. What are you doing in the ring? The ring is Roosevelt's ring. Take him outside the ring. Take him on non-political fronts. Take him on those civic fronts. Take him on economic fronts. We need to be talking class analysis in Dominica right now. People are afraid to touch it because they're afraid of this, mullah, or that. But if you're serious about changing the political culture in Dominica, you must talk class analysis because it is class analysis that is destroying Dominica. You must talk it. It's not racial to express that we have a total hegemony of mulatto culture controlling the economics of Dominica. It's real.
Well,
it's real.
You sound like my friend Will Share. But
you understand? And that's what people are not understanding. If you make those things very real and forward thinking, the poor people of the country will follow you. Because that is the reality. It's not a DLP reality or DFP reality or UWP reality. It's a reality that Dominica's laws, our taxes, our tariffs, our import, the whole world structured. It's structured to benefit a hegemonic mulatto economy.
You do not want to call names, but we know very well who has that hegemony.
Yeah, we don't even need to call names. The philosophy is clear.
And the evidence,
yeah.
and I just want to speak up here as well, because I do not mind if that hegemony was built on using our resources to produce.
Agreed.
It's buying and selling. And the ordinary goods that we buy from these controllers are inflated. You know, I went to research. I probably ought not to have said his name.
It's real talk. It's real talk.
The prices are the same for the supermarkets. Basically, you find, you know, differentiation, but not anything significant. And I spent over $500 in some stuff. And I look at what I bought, and I was, this is what you call inflation. This is what inflation, you know, because with $500, you know, 2 years ago, I definitely would have walked out, not just with more goods, but better quality goods.
Good quality goods.
So what is happening here? You have these people, you know, just retailing. Where's the agro-processing? Where are the factories? You know, all we do is just buy and sell. And then you have this group of people who are dominating. So you see the expansions, you know, they open the store in that area, another, you know, in another year, you may see another one popping up. You know, and this is not about jealousy, or this is not about any difficulties that people expanding their businesses, because business is good.
Yeah.
But we need to discuss what's happening. How many
the government, you see?
Yes. How many more Macmillans and Jollies and how many more Charles? You know, and said, when you really think about it, you know, over the past years, you have not seen an expansion of these businesses except Jolly. And these older entrepreneurs are going away, and I am not seeing that the younger ones, not even the children, are necessarily showing the aptitude to maintain and expand the businesses. So what we may see these hegemonic forces getting wider and wider. And by the time we capture what is really happening, they may even have a greater control of our economy.
But Josh, that's why I'm telling you. That's why to not have that conversation in the political process in Dominica by political parties is a folly. It's a folly. And I'll tell you, because you see, the policy that the government is implementing economically is based on a principle that is not about empowering local, indigenous, native people to grow economically. It's a valid argument to make, because when these guys hegemonize the society, they determine prices without our impact. You had Anthony Astafan, Yvonne Asif, and these guys sitting on the investment council. Let's think about that, George. We have a country which is 90-something% of poor people, George. Poor people. We have our investment council, and the final decision on the investment council is determined by a crew of mulattoes. These guys, they blocked further supermarkets coming to Dominica. We're paying 15 to 20% more on food in Dominica. That same food you talked about will be cheaper in St. Lucia, because St. Lucia has allowed more competition in supermarket structures than Dominica has. You understand? So they have this nice little circle. The only thing out of them left out was Karam. Karam is the only exception, because Karam not in their thing right now. You understand? But so they decide what comes into Dominica and what does not come into Dominica. And you want to tell me that Prime Minister can come and talk to me in St. Joseph as a poor person, can come and talk to me in Grande as a poor person and tell me you care about poor people? Where are your policies to ensure we get wealth in the world?
The policy basically is to give hand. That's what the policy is. It's empower people. And that is the frightening thing about poverty. And when I say poverty, I'm not just talking about income poverty, but I'm talking about intellectual poverty and
Wicked.
poverty. Because you may not be intellectually enriched, but if you have a value system, if you have a faith, then you have some kind of discernment to see what's happening in the system. But we have a desertification of philosophy in Dominica. We have a number of people who are degreed, but when you listen to them, you listen to their reasoning, you have to ask yourself, what's up with tertiary education? Because you try to have a conversation with some people in Dominica, and they come across as being so empty that you have to wonder whether this country really has hope. Because those of us who got the handle on education are supposed to be the leaders to agitate, especially those of us who came from poor families.
Yeah.
We are supposed to be standing for the poor man, but we are out there showing ourselves with a leader some of us hail as the greatest politician Dominica has ever. Disempowering poor people and destroying the country. The institution destroyed. The productive base of this country has been destroyed. National identity has been destroyed. The sovereignty of the country is being sold to foreigners. As I speak with you, we have a Chinese embassy that's on a portion of land for 99-year lease. If you go up there, you will see all these fancy satellites. And we do not know exactly what data that is, whether spying is taking place, or whoever. We don't know those things. And then we see arrangements being made between the government and a number of foreign companies. Also, in recent times, we have the FTE, which has control over CBI monies, which appears to be public money. We're going to come to that. But an ordinary person, development in Dominica, on these smart clinics which are being built, on these apartments which are being built, and realizing that there is more to what they are seeing. And then when we talk about corruption in Dominica, it's real. It's real. It's not a fancy thing. It is real. Because I want your opinion on this whole CBI, the government of the MNCP arrangement with respect to our CBI.
Well,
Before you go there, I want to respond to a comment you made earlier. As far as the absence of the deeds or titles for the recipients of this apartment, the PJ era, when Patrick John, as the Prime Minister of Dominica, through his government, struck houses for poor Dominicans. Some of these houses are still sitting at Bank State. And according to you, when those houses were built, the people now we have a situation in Dominica where you have hundreds of people living in apartments from the Kalinago territory, Dailies, Grand Bay, Maho, just name it. People have received and receiving apartments. And since 2019, the Prime Minister of Dominica promised these recipients to obtain their certificates of title. But there is a little dilemma here. There is a little dilemma, and I want to comment on probably that will be opening for a wider conversation with arrangement with the government of Dominica then. Because the government of Dominica told the people of Dominica that after Hurricane Maria, a friend of Dominica, MMCE, so Arab, again a foreigner, in Anthony Aaron, entrepreneur, CEO, visionary, comes to Dominica and he has love for Dominica. He feels sorry for Dominicans because our have just devastated Dominica. And he says, Mr. Prime Minister, I love Dominicans, I love Dominica. build some houses there for the people. I love southern people. They were affected by tropical America in 2015. Let me build some houses for them. So in 2017, he and the Prime Minister entered into an arrangement where he would spend monies and build houses for the Petit Southern people at Bellevue, and in exchange, the government hands him a bag of passports to go and sell. He said, Anthony, yeah, man, you gave us apartments. You are such a great lover of this country. You came here and you like the greenery. You love the beautiful women. You love our black and the beaches. You just love the country, man. And you went and you built houses for us. So yeah, take a bag of passports. So take the bag of passports and sell it. Give us the fees, the government fees for the applicants, and the rest of it, put it in an extra account and be charged. We don't need to put it on the public. We don't have the cost of these constructions of these houses, and we do not have revenue figures for these gentlemen. So we don't know what is the disparity or the difference between the cost of building these apartments versus the revenue from selling our passports. And for Dominicans, it is okay because I got an apartment.
You know, Josh, these guys, you know what was funny? The Prime Minister, right, was in Parliament. He was making a statement around the houses. I don't know if people remember. And he talked about the ownership. And the MMC guy was on the radio 2 days later, you know, questioning the ownership of those apartments by Dominicans, you know, essentially saying those are our investor apartments, you know.
Right.
And, you know, and they never meshed that, you know, as to make it clear on that. But that is why these people are getting things for these apartments, George. This government, the thing is, this program started by a mistake, you know. A mistake.
You think it's a mistake, or it was started by a seed of corruption?
Well, the thing is, the houses were never supposed to have been given to Dominicans, George. The CDI money, the way these guys have this thing organized. This guy sells the passports. He essentially operates as a cumulative investor after the passports are sold at that company, MMC. No, they don't have to even give the money to the government anymore. So they have investor money plus the total benefits in one lump sum form.
Well, I want to stick in a point here, and I want us to look at the cradle of, and that is where our friend, Police Officer Clevin Mill, comes in, because as you know, earlier on, he got ahead of us on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a solo runner, so he went ahead of us, but we have finally caught up with him. And I want us to look at how the CBI program has evolved, because I want our listeners and followers to understand what is happening. So Clevin Mill told us that under Dame Eugenia Charles in '93, there was the birth of what we know as the CBI.
Yes.
And the CBI, as we knew it then, was more of an investors program. Somebody wanted a piece of Dominica, they wanted a passport, they invested in Dominica, and in exchange, based on the discretion of the Prime Minister then, he or she could obtain a passport. And then in 1995, here came the United Workers' Party and did some re-engineering and pushed the program. And then in 2000, and I think it was in 2001, the CBI program was suspended. I don't know if you remember that situation with Canada.
Yes. Passports. A whole bunch of Chinese who actually couldn't passports. Yes.
Right. So the program was suspended, and it was in 2006. It was resumed, but in a re-engineered way. And since then, you have had changes in the laws, well, in the regulations, and this CBI just blossomed into an empire to the point where in 2013, based on a discretionary power granted to the Minister of Citizenship, by the Citizenship Act of Dominica, regulations were born. So you had the CBI regulations. And in 2014, those regulations were further developed. And based on that discretionary power of the minister, we had the CBI just blossom in Dominica.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the regulations. We hear about Jungle Bay and Range and Kempinski. And we also hear about contributions. Under the CBI regulations in Dominica, there are two known options in which an applicant for Dominica's passport can obtain a passport.
Yes.
So whoever wants a second or third passport and considers Dominica as the go place, then he or she can either make a contribution to the Economic Diversification Fund together with his or her fees, and in exchange, after going through the due process, due diligence, his passport is approved or his citizenship is approved, he gets his citizenship certificate, he gets his passport, and bam, he goes his merry way without having to come to Dominica. So that is the option under the EDF. And then you have the other option, which is the real estate option. And the real estate option is twofold. An applicant can apply to invest directly in real estate, an approved real estate, or an applicant can invest in an approved project, like Jungle Bay.
Yeah.
So those who go under the real estate option, they pay the regular fees, the processing fees, due diligence, that goes to the consolidated funds of Dominica. And the investment money itself for the project goes into an escrow account for the purpose of developing that project. So, for example, Jungle Bay. Jungle Bay is an approved CBI development project under which it obtained money from investors, from applicants, persons who bought Dominica's citizenship. But in 2017, something strange happened where we discovered that the government had entered into an arrangement with MMCE for the construction of the apartments up at Bellevue. And there were quite a number of questions to the point where Anthony Hayden was forced to make a public statement as to exactly what is the situation within his company and Dominica. And it is at this juncture, the gentleman said that post-tropical storm Erica, out of his love for Dominica, he volunteered to build these apartments.
Yeah.
And then he and the government entered into an arrangement whereby he would recover his expenses by selling Dominica's citizenship.
Yeah.
He became an approved agent under the CBI unit as well as a developer. So since then, Mr. Hayden has been selling citizenship and building apartments, and more recently, the government of Dominica said that they were going to credit from MMC to build these smart clinics. And once again, in exchange, MMC is allowed to sell our passports. Now, Zed, we have a problem here because MMC sells the passports. The question is, under what option, under which of the options? Is it under the real estate option or under the contribution option? Should it be under the contribution option, it means that the monies which MMCE collects supposed to be in consolidated funds of Dominica. If it's under the real estate option, it means that he may be justified in keeping those monies into an escrow account for investors who are the passport applicants. And therefore, it would mean the apartments, though constructed on public land, like in Bellevue or La Plaine, would be owned by MMCE. And if these apartments are owned by MMCE, it means that the government of Dominica cannot give away what is owned by MMCE.
They That's what I tell you. He jumped on the radio going back to 2018 when he confronted the Prime Minister. I was surprised, man. That shit was a crucial moment. But it pointed out what I'm really trying to tell you, George. Here's the worst part about the first investment into this thing. The first investment is still proceeds from passports that were sold. So MMC has never invested MMC's money into Dominica, Even the beginning investment in Dominica was from proceeds from passport sales at a passport seller already, Understand that, eh? So it's not like MMC came in and they came in with money of their personal monies, and they have never put their personal money into Dominica.
That's not the impression they gave.
Huh?
That's not the impression they gave.
Yeah, but when you check it out, you realize that is what it is.
Well, Anthony Hayden said that they volunteered or they expended their own money. And the government of Dominica has entered into a contractual arrangement to allow them to sell our citizenships.
Yeah.
And there are a number of questions with that arrangement said. Because here it is, you have a company which has no record of construction anywhere in the world.
None.
Being granted a contract to go and build houses at Bellevue for 57 people. And the Prime Minister goes into Parliament in 2018, caught red-handed, when there seemed to have been a disparity or discrepancies with government revenues versus the number of passports that were sold.
Exactly.
This pans down. That is when the leader of the opposition, Honorable Lennox Linton, asked for what appears to have been missing, $1.2 billion.
Yeah.
And today the Prime Minister has not been able to tell the people of Dominica how has it been able to allow MMCE to sell ships and to have exclusive control of CB revenues, which appears to be public monies. And public monies are supposed to be deposited in the consolidated funds of Dominica. And public monies, which are not to be deposited in the consolidated funds of Dominica, supposed to be in an escrow account approved by the government of Dominica. So, for a specified purpose. So as in this case, the government seems to think that it's justified in saying, hey, these monies are public, but we approved the projects which MMC have undertaken because they are special purpose projects. And as such, the monies which they collect ought not to be placed in the consolidated funds. Let's just say for argument's sake that is right. Let's just say for argument's sake that is right. Is it right for this escrow account to escape public purview in the Commonwealth of Dominica?
Josh, the very fact that the arrangement was made without going through parliamentary process is already a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That is already a problem. If you are setting up something that is transparent and accountable, you do not have any issue with having parliamentary oversight to a program, if it's going to be transparent and accountable. The very reason why it was not made transparent, it was not made on the parliamentary process, already nullifies the program, Joshua. You cannot, as a single person, make a decision on behalf of the country without having a discussion in the parliament of the country. You understand? So I have no issue with Roosevelt Scary being innovative about the program. I have a problem with how he goes about his innovations and how he governs, period. Discussions are never taking place. You have parliament meeting twice a year, 3 times a year, Joshua. That is disrespectful to the entire country for you to be talking about development and for you to have a parliament that meets 2 and 3 times a year. Only when necessary on emergency matters that are internationally brought about, not even local issues. You understand? So I am saying quite frankly that if you're going to do any rearrangement into that program, it should be done through parliamentary process. The very fact that it wasn't done through parliamentary process nullifies it on any legal grounds. And that is where you as a lawyer, and I'm glad that you guys are doing that thing, that is where the whole is. It is legally feasible, Josh, to challenge and to stop this program.
Yeah, well, we will only know about its illegality or legality when it's tested in court. I cannot say that a court of law will necessarily accept your argument and to declare that the contractual arrangement between MMCE and the government of Dominica is unlawful. But it is worth a trial, and a number of lawyers are now studying the situation and will get instructions from those who want to test the contract in a court of law. But on the surface of it, there are quite a number of questions, some of which you have already highlighted, in respect to this arrangement between MMC and the government of Dominica. And we cannot just look at it, or we ought not to look at it only from a legal point of view. Can you raise an important point? Where you have a government which is responsible to act for and on behalf of Dominicans, entering into arrangements which it keeps as a secret. And that secret seems to be enriching some people. And the Dominican public gets crumbs. Because when you think of it, Zed, these apartments and these smart clinics, in terms of the cost of constructions, may just be a small fraction of the monies which MMC has been obtaining from selling our citizenship.
It is, Josh, it is.
We don't have an eye over the accounting. But then let's just look at a few comments here from David Joseph. Welcome. He says, Cleville Mills, procedural dishonest of the housing program that is being critiqued. That is correct. Thank you, David. Viva Mamo, the gentleman who continues to educate, enlighten, and
yes,
show a lot of explanation in regards to the CBI program. Welcome. He says here, the entire CBI is a corrupt Ponzi scheme. In part 5 of my research report, I will attempt to outline the areas of challenge to the scheme based on abuse of discretionary authority to promulgate secondary legislation pursuant to the Citizenship Act, unreasonable exercise of authority, and potential out-of-scope authority.
Exactly.
Virus provisions. Yes, and Viva Mamo is on point, because what has happened then is that under the Citizenship Act of Dominica, Section 20, 20A and 20B, a discretionary power was granted to the Minister of Citizenship to make regulations to enforce the Act itself, the Citizenship Act, and Part 7 of the Constitution of Dominica. And based on that delegation power granted to the Minister of Citizenship, the government went ahead and built an entire CBI program through regulations. And the question is whether the act meant or intends to give any Minister of Citizenship that wide power to make regulations to the point where his decisions can affect the demographics of the island. Because of course, CBI is not just having an economic impact on Dominica, it is having a much wider impact, just that we have not seen it. Because, for example, in the last 3 years, we have sold over 15,000 Dominica's citizenship.
And that's just the last 3 years.
That's just in the last 3 years. This program has been around for some time. So let's just say, post-COVID, we sell even more passports, because that's our main export commodity right now.
Exactly.
If not CBI, then what? That's what we do. We just sell passports in Dominica. Hey, you want some hot bread? Come to the bakery of passports. And you get your hot bread. You get me? And interestingly, our passports are the cheapest on the global market right now. You can even get a Dominican passport for 50,000 US dollars.
We have no value. We have no value.
You understand? We just go ahead and sell our passports. So in selling those passports, what we'll have then in time to come, because we do not have any ceiling, we can sell as many passports as possible within a year. There's no ceiling. There's no policy saying we are not, and we should not, we ought not, and we shall not sell more than 20,000 passports within 5 years. There's no such policy. So if the government keeps selling passports, it's better for the boys. LMC, sell your passport. Raphael, sell your passport. Mr. Lawrence, sell your passport. Nasi, sell your passport. More money for us. But you know what? In the next 10 years or the next 20 years, if we continue with this trend, we're going to have more economic citizens than
Dominicans. And Josh, I'm glad you. I want to go back a little bit to where you talked about the discretionary measure. And I remember the case. With Roosevelt Skelly that was brought up in regard to his passport when it was brought up. Now here was a case that could have been won, and I think the angle that the case was brought in was the weakest angle. And I want you guys to be careful with this case here. In that very same case that you guys have to be very careful with it. I think it is much more easier to tackle the discretionary measure issue, to come to that case from that angle, because in just basic governmental procedures, it is very hard for you to justify making exclusive governmental arrangements without doing parliamentary processes. The discretion allows you to have an idea, sure, that you think there are new ways you can change the program. That is valid entirely. But there is no discretionary measure that gives you that kind of authority that you can have a good interest of the government of a good improvement to a program, and you cannot come in Parliament and discuss it with Parliament and go through parliamentary procedures. I think just
a correction. Under the Citizenship Act of Dominica 20B, it does allow the Minister of Citizenship to make these regulations negative resolutions, meaning that he does not have to take it to Parliament.
But making a resolution and implementation of the regulations.
Yes, he made these regulations he doesn't need to go to Parliament to get approval to make these regulations. This entire CBI legal framework is built on the exercise of minister's discretion. There is no enacting powers, meaning that there is an approval of Parliament. It is not an act of Parliament. They are just regulations. Now it is the same or it's parallel to what exists in St. Kitts. It has similar or even the same Constitutional and Citizenship Act provisions with Dominica, where the Minister of Citizenship can make these regulations without the approval of Parliament. But the question that is being raised by lawyers is whether that provision intended for a Minister of Citizenship to make regulations which are different to the prescribed provisions in the Constitution and the Citizenship Act in respect to citizenship. If you look at the, there's no such thing as CBI. You look at the Act itself, there's no such thing as getting citizenship or getting citizenship by investment. There's no such thing. So what has happened is that with that wide discretionary power, the minister has gone beyond the prescribed scope of both the Constitution and the Act. Hence the reason why people like Viva Mamo is questioning whether the regulations are ultra virus. Now that
But Josh, I'm saying we should the very regulation, the very act that allow that should be challenged.
And yes, and that is precisely.
Yeah.
It has. I mean, we have seen several judges in different Commonwealth jurisdictions striking out acts of Parliament on the basis that they are ultra virus. The acts are inconsistent with the Constitution.
Inconsistent with democratic principles.
Right, where it finds, because in Dominica we have constitutional supremacy. So any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution, less an ouster clause, saving law clause, will be struck off. So there is a question as to whether Section 20 of the Citizenship Act gave that kind of power which the Minister of Citizenship has exercised in the formulation of CBI regulations, which now may be abused.
Yeah.
MMC contract with the government of Dominica is an example where you have an executive going into an arrangement with a private company to sell our citizenships and exchange to spend some of that money in building a few apartments for which the people have received title deeds and a few smart clinics around Dominica. And all of a sudden, find a number of Dominicans in a carnival-like spirit, jumping and whirling and celebrating that this government is the best thing ever. You know, it is just, and that is why we have to keep educating or enlightening the public so that they will understand the magnitude and the gravity of the issue we are dealing with. Because the CBI program, as far as MMC is concerned, has become like a black hole. There are a lot of questions. We do not know for sure what's happening with our monies. We have an idea. And that itself cannot be right. It cannot be right. But let's look at a comment here from Bernard Allen. He says here, I was looking at an assessment of that arrangement between the government of Dominica and MMC today. And the very same thing was being said. MMCE, as the investor, gets the difference in the cost of building the apartments and the amounts paid to him from the money made in passport sales. So what will they do? They will build the apartment as cheaply as it is possible in order to increase their profit margin. And so when we have no accountability, we have no idea as to how much is actually being made by them. They can milk us as a nation, and those who have agreed to have it all this way are rewarded. What fools they are taking us for. And people like Mills defend this sick nonsense. And then Marcelin Edwards, thank you for your comments, Bernard, on points. Marcelin Edwards says Mills refers to himself as a patriotic Dominican, but has absolutely no problems with MMC. And Marcelin Edwards goes on to Anthony Hayden fronting for Roosevelt Skerrit in the name of MMC. Valid question. Clevin Mills says, Joshua, you know it is not public money. It is an investment option. I want to stop here on that comment. I said I want your take, and I want you to focus on what Clevin is saying. Clevin is saying that the monies which MMCE collects from the sale of our passports are not public monies. He said they are an investment. He said it's investment. So what do you take on that, Zed?
Well, that's right. That's what I was saying at the beginning. First of all, I'm not going to take away the Prime Minister's power or his intent to improve a program in Dominica. I have no issues with that. If you have a way that you can improve a program that's going to benefit us, I am all for it. But what I do not understand and what I want to really get across to Clevin Mills is, if you are in a program that is supposed to be consistent with Dominica's development, and the laws of the country tells you money coming from the sales of passport has to come into Dominica, has to be accounted for, has to be addressed in terms of our budget. Then if these guys are serious about investing in Dominica, what is the issue for the money to be coming directly into our budget, have it accounted, and then sitting down with this investor and deciding what it is we're going to do national developmental wise, what is it going to cost, how is it going to come for it, and use that money to do those developments. I can work with that process, but that's not what's going on, Josh. That's not what's going on. We are not getting a primary accounting of the monies from the investors, and our passports are being sold. I can't see you not winning that in a court.
Well said, I don't see that either, but I want to expand on the point which you just made, and I want to do so within the parameters of Clevin Mills' statement. And I'm going to Clevin Mills' statement again, and I'm not too sure when I can put this on the screen, because I want us to assess Clevin Mills' statement carefully. Clevin Mills, he said, Joshua, you know that the money is not public money, it is an investment option. So let's just say Clevin Mills is right, Zed. Let's just say for argument's sake that Clevin Mills is right. Clevin Mills, if this money is collected by MMCE isn't public money and therefore ought not to be deposited into the consolidated funds of Dominica, and the deposit of these monies into escrow accounts under the exclusive control of MMC and probably one government signatory, then what are the ramifications of that? Well, let's look at it. He says the money is not public money, so if it's not public money, I agree, it's not supposed to be deposited into the consolidated funds of Dominica. And even if it were public money, the government can allow it to go into an escrow account if it's a special purpose money. And the next question is, if such money goes into an escrow account, even that money itself are not supposed to be accounted for. We'll get to that. But let's just say Cleville is correct. Cleville is saying further that it's an investment option. Now, if it is an investment option, Z, it means that these monies belong to investors. You see, like how we have Jungle Bay?
Yes.
In Jungle Bay, it's a development project where people exercise the option of investing in Jungle Bay and in return to get citizenship. So they put their 200,000 US, pay their fees, their diligence fees, their application fees, their solicitors fees, and in exchange they obtain their citizenship. By doing that, they would have earned shares in Jungle Bay or at Jungle Bay. Clearly, that the monies MMC is collecting is investment monies, which means that they're supposed to go into an escrow account. Now, if that is true, it means that the applicants for citizenships would be shareholders of the apartments at Bellevue.
With that, Josh, that is why I told you the brother came on the radio and he said these are investor apartments. They're not apartments of Dominican people. That's what I'm telling you. The prime minister is the prime minister that created the problem, you know, because he got caught with his pants down. See? But the prime minister, Josh, is able to get away with what is going on because MMCE is part of the prime minister.
Well, we are going to come to that. I'm not prepared to make this bold statement.
As a lawyer, I understand. I get you. I'll make them. I'll make them. That is what is going on there. That is what really caused the friction, you know, inside of there. You know. What these guys do, Josh, is these guys get monies from each project. They make much more money than the project cost for the passport program. Much more money than the project cost. So this guy, he's using that much more money to build in advance and then still selling. So he's building up other projects and then maximizing money on that project that he has built from other projects' money. You see? So when Viva talks about the Ponzi scheme, he hits it right. You see? So there is a continuum of lack of accountability. You know, it's a problem. It's a problem. And where is the excess money being spent? It's being spent. That's why the Prime Minister tells us it's not your business where I get my damn money from.
Right, and you're seeing the epicenter of this scheme, the boys. So,
yeah.
Particularly with MMCE, you have a CEO who happens to be the Prime Minister's friend. Coincidentally, that friend happens to build a house at Mount Daniel. That friend happens to lease that house to the Prime Minister. And coincidentally, 64,000 EC dollars has to be paid out of the treasury of the Commonwealth of Dominica to facilitate the sale of this honorable, great, king-like Prime Minister. That ordinary Dominicans are not looking at what is happening. They are oblivious, they're nonchalant, they just care less because this man was sent.
By God.
You see the responsibility we have. It's a very heavy burden, a very heavy cross we have to carry in getting the people of Dominica to understand what is happening in this country. I've touched on some of the issues, and this is not just a legal issue. These issues have long-term implications for us as a nation and future generations.
I personally,
the military aspect and the legal aspect, but we have to look at the demographic aspects as well.
I personally, I can't understand how come there wasn't some serious massive protest regarding that house in Dominica, Josh. I really don't understand because I personally thought the Prime Minister was really advantageous in applying that $64,000 bill onto the people of Dominica. I really think that's advantageous. And you can see he had some mind problems later on. He came with some different statements, but he knows that was unjust. He knows that was unjust. You know what I mean? And so I think there's some basic level of decency that has been lost by this Prime Minister. You know, when you get accustomed to taking advantage of people, you don't even realize you're taking advantage of them anymore. It becomes like a habit. And I think that house issue, that has been like the most disrespectful aspect of it. To me, that is more disrespectful than a whole lot of other things. You cannot tell me we know you're accounting. International records have you as a Prime Minister who is doing very fine economically. I don't know where you make the money from, but you're doing very fine economically. We come from a hurricane. We come into a COVID. You're asking everybody in the country to sacrifice, and you come in and get a top shelf residence at a time when you're asking everybody to sacrifice, and you're going to Parliament, and you're getting parliamentarians to sign for the people of Dominica to pay that kind of rent for you in these times. I don't understand why Dominica didn't erupt on that.
Well, and Zed, as I said, coincidentally, his landlord happens to be his friend, the same Anthony Hayden, who is at the helm and apex of MMCE, a private company that is controlling Dominica's passports monies. And we do not have an idea as to the profit margin of that company. So they go to set up passports, and in exchange, they give us a few apartments. Now, while we're on these apartments, Zed, have you heard anyone giving a value of each apartment?
We listen, Josh, we had architects just doing basic assessments. And these apartments, they're rating these apartments at $200,000 and $250,000 max. The government has these apartments at $400,000.
So you're saying that each apartment could value around $250,000?
Yeah. We had people go in there, check these materials, do professional assessments, and the maximum value they could place on these homes were $200,000 to $250,000.
So you're looking at some people, for example, the PT7 people who left PT7 by force because the place has not been declared as a disaster area, and as such, some of them still have to be paying loans or mortgages, and their houses could value up to $1 million, $700,000, $500,000, and they're now placed in those apartments, some of which value, you said, about $250,000, which is that they're in a house at a lower value. They have not obtained the title. When they do, they will be getting strata titles. Should Cleveland Mills be wrong? Let us say Cleveland Mills is wrong, and that investors do not own the apartments at Belleville, Lap Lane, and Delices, and that the recipients will get their titles. Because if Cleveland Mills is right, it means that MMCE and investors in its program, its so-called housing option, are the owners of these apartments. Of course,
beautiful, Josh. Beautiful. Beautiful. I was waiting for the hammer to come
down. Money. Let's hope that Cleveland Mills is wrong so that the recipients of these apartments can get their titles. I
hope he's listening.
They will have to sell their shares to the government of Dominica. It owns the land, but the structure, the physical structure owned by MMC and investors according to Cleveland Mills. So
we need to take this issue to court, man, and just destroy this.
Selling shares to the government of Dominica. Good evening. Martin Edwards. Seems we have integrated into second class. And we have Lofty Duran here. Yes, for the past 3 years, financial years ending 2017, a total of 15,477 passports have been sold. Yeah, that's 15,477 passports sold in the between the financial years 2017 and 2020.
3 years.
Yep.
No. We're not even talking about the Chinese arrangement, you know. The China arrangement, we haven't even addressed that yet, you know. and so linking into the electoral reform aspect is also a critical point for the state and the volume of people who are getting passports. We need another thing that we need to address in the court is we need to be taking away patriotic rights from the citizenship program because it is dangerous for our future. The volume of people, if we're talking 15,000 people in 3 years, we can easily approximate that there's much more Dominicans with much more foreigners than there are Dominicans with Dominican passports.
Right.
And so if we do not address the patriotic rights in that program, like St. Kitts, for instance, these people you can see they're thinking over there, they took off patriotic rights out of that program. So no matter how many citizens you have who are non-Dominicans, they cannot affect your political process at home. We don't have that. We haven't taken care of those things. So I think that's something that we need to take the government to the court on also, George. We really need to, because in the interest of protection of indigenous people and native rights, this passport program as well is a threat. It's a threat politically.
Was that under the current electoral laws of Dominica, these economic citizens cannot just come to Dominica to vote. They will have to meet the residency requirement. They will have to stay physically on the island for at least 3 months in a polling district for them to be able to register to vote.
George, these guys are going towards international voting next year, George. These guys, what you talking about there? These guys don't have no plan for that, you know, brother.
I'm just talking about the current election.
Yeah, these guys going to allow everybody to vote.
Right. So I just want Zed, and again, I want to ask our followers and listeners to share the broadcast. Share the broadcast. Remember, every Sunday from 8 p.m., we'll be having a conversation of national importance. So tonight we're having an open discussion.
Yeah.
Welcome to share your comments, and I'm looking at a few of them. Again, Clevy Mills. Joshua, are you standing for the poor man? When you had the opportunity to stand out, you toed the party line.
You got personal. You get beaten, you got personal. You know this? Whenever he gets beaten, he gets personal. Weak.
So, just to respond to this, I do stand for the poor man, and that is why I'm here. And standing for the poor man is not just to give him a hand out. It is to help to empower him. It is to help to bring him to a state of consciousness. Because many of us are in a state of false consciousness. Our thinking is borrowed from another person. I'm encouraging people to think for themselves, to think,
yes,
which I have in certain areas. I am prepared to learn, and I'm prepared to share what I have. And in the process, through that interaction, I'm helping the poor man to be elevated. Just as poor black people during the civil rights movements in the West, most of the United States of America, and they brought change and planting seeds of empowerment throughout Dominica so that the ordinary barefoot Dominican will understand that this government in Dominica is a disaster to its integrity and to the future of the nation. This government has collected more revenues than any previous government. On Mambo's regime, banana was king. We made money out of farming. People toil with sweat, blood, and water. They were able to build houses cash, buy their vehicles cash. So we moved from a green gold era, and we tried to commercialize Dominica more. We went more into offshore banking and the service industries. And under the United Workers' Party, to date, we had the highest export figures in 1999, Zed.
Real talk.
Dominica had the highest export figures. And since then, what has happened? We have a government that has specialized in selling passports. How innovative, how great a leader. Just a few forms, and you get a passport, and in exchange, you pick up monies. How innovative.
And Josh, what is sad part about it is not the fact that he sells the passport, but the fact that the volume of monies that has come from that program. If you're a great leader, we're supposed to be seeing serious innovation on the ground with those monies. The fact is, we're not seeing the money in Dominica. We're not seeing the money, the volume. Lennox told us 1 billion. He came and he agreed it would have been 2.2 billion. You know what $1 billion is? You know what $1 billion can do for Dominica?
Well, we have $1 billion economy.
You
So
this guy's a joke. This guy's a
$1
joke. We're supposed to have transformed Dominica. This guy, Roosevelt Skerritt, if Roosevelt Skerritt was a great leader, Roosevelt Skerritt would not even have to import anybody from Dominica to come from anywhere to come and work for him in Dominica. With the volume of monies that these passports have put into these guys' hands, the kind of work that these guys could have done with for Dominicans, the transformation, the UWP would not even exist. Freedom Party would not even exist. Roosevelt Skerritt would not even have to be stressed out and campaigning in Dominica. The fact that this government has to go through these extreme efforts to win an election is testament to the fact that these guys have been a failure with the volume of money from that very program.
Well,
failure.
Yeah, of course, then. And you're just looking at CBI revenues.
Yeah.
You are also to look at VAT revenues.
Okay.
Engineer Charles.
The mulatto tax.
VAT revenues. Mr. Edison James, former Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of Dominica, has no revenues. Roosevelt Skerritt has VAT revenues. He has CBI revenues. He has grants from his buddies, the Chinese. This government has obtained monies from China, Venezuela, all kinds of grants.
The World Bank, even the World Bank, I have never seen the World Bank give Dominica money like this. Your Roosevelt is good, Roosevelt bad. You know, the man, there's some things, but all Mr. have to do is just be honest, you know, Bridget.
So you're looking at millions, billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And the question is, what has this government done with so much money? And what do we have to show for it? The West Coast Road, Portsmouth to Roseau, the Libla Highway, as we call it. Then we have the roads from Roseau to our airport at Marigot. Then we have a stadium, which is a big white elephant. No disrespect to the cricketers and the cricket world out there. But that is what it is from an economic point of view. The cost of maintaining this stadium is more than what it generates for us economically.
All the projects.
It showed a lack of vision on his government to have not made a multi-purpose sports facility.
No parking. That should have the base of that stadium should have solved Roseau's parking problem.
Lack of vision, said. Lack of vision.
Joking, Bridget.
2006, when Roosevelt Skerritt, as we know, had left his cabinet members, went to Barbados, entered into diplomatic relationship individually with China, and once he became the prime minister, he crystallized it. Since 20, or was it 2, that Skerritt signed, according to Alec Lawrence, after 17 hours of negotiating with the Chinese. He came up with 4 pillar projects.
Yeah.
The 4 pillar projects are still unfolding in 2021. The part of the 4 pillar project was the enhancement of the Princess Margaret Hospital, which has since been dubbed as the Dominica-China Friendship Hospital.
20-something years later.
Yeah. Since 2004, 2006. All right, we're still waiting on the completion of the 4 pillar projects. In the meanwhile, we have sold part of our sovereignty. In the meanwhile, we are giving part of our national soul to China. In the meanwhile, we have sold a significant number of our citizenships, giving them to foreigners for a penny in exchange. In the meanwhile, with all that money that has come into this country, we are still last economically in the Eastern Caribbean. With the smallest economy, the lowest minimum wage, the lowest foreign direct investment, the lowest export figures, the lowest tourist figures. These are realities.
No stimuli.
The highest unemployment rate. You understand? The smallest small business sector. That is what we have in this country. We continue to be plagued and saddled with brain drain, low salaries, high underemployment, a lack of opportunities for our young people, a lack of entrepreneurship, high cost of doing business, high import duties, high electricity bill, high cost of doing business in Dominica. The electricity bill will destroy you if you attempt to go into a capital-intensive business venture in this country.
Josh, and we should not even have that kind of electrical bill in Dominica. With the kind of monies coming out at CDI, we should have already bought Domlek, Josh. We should have already combined Domlek with Duasco to give our people a cheap energy source in Dominica. We should have done innovative technologies in terms of sun, solar, and wind. We're building a hospital. There's no greenery to the hospital. There's no concept of minimizing energy cost. I saw a school being built, Blackmore in Mao or something. Look at the cover in that school. Real estate. Nothing about green energy. A project that can be carbon neutral. Those things just aren't addressed in Dominica. And we talk about the nature island country. It's madness. But Josh, I want to talk about the Chinese for a minute, Josh. Because we've been talking about that Chinese thing from some abstract concept like where it is and what it is. But Dominicans, we have to ask ourselves a question. I heard the Prime Minister 2 weekends ago talking about some antagonistic way regarding America. We have to start asking ourselves a question. Are we really with the Prime Minister on his posture of America? Are we as Dominican people, do we really have a problem with America? Aren't we American friendly people? Aren't we our love relationship with the US? Why do we allow our Prime Minister in his arrogance to determine our relationship with the US in the manner that he has? We have an antagonistic relationship with America that's unnecessary. Unnecessary. We're a country, we have emergencies, we have hurricanes. America's army and military is one of the best at helping out after those kinds of situations happen. We need to have a good relationship with the United States, a much better one than Roosevelt portends at this point in time. This idea that we are some kind of Chinese, hegemonic colonial kind of construct, I have a problem with that, and Dominicans need to start speaking up about that. We need to start speaking up about that. We're trying to get an airport built. Why can't we get an airport from the US? Why aren't we talking about other options than this option that Skerritt is talking about? We have Portsmouth. We have a base that's just sitting there. We could offer the US a 50-year lease for Portsmouth. The amount of money coming from just utilization of that base would transform the North and have them build an airport for us. Why aren't we having a more open conversation about how we're going to move forward on development that involves the United States much more in conversation as our neighbor than this Chinese relationship? And we have to start talking about it. We have to let these Chinese know that we are not going to sit down easy on this deal when we deal with Roosevelt Skerritt. I'm telling you. Because the way things are going down, Mika, if we don't address this Chinese issue really seriously, we're going to be second-class citizens to the Chinese in Dominica in a matter of time.
Well said. We are already second-class citizens. Economically, income-wise or financially, we are second-class citizens, except for the hegemonic business group in Dominica, most of the mulattoes.
Yeah, real talk.
Dominicans are already second-class citizens, and I will tell you why. The purchasers of our passports are wealthy people. They are wealthy people. They purchase our passports so that they can access over 150 countries, some of which they are not able to access with their indigenous passports. Now, these wealthy people do not come to Dominica, but should something happen which would force these people out of their comfort zone, and they're looking for some kind of solace. And Dominica is the place because, after all, they are citizens. Should these people come back here, let's just say out of the possible 60,000 or 50,000 economic citizens, 10,000 returns here said. Out of that 10,000, 500 need to invest in Dominica, and they can probably buy off Roseau.
Exactly.
So they have the capital to do that. It's just that it has not been exercised. So it's a potential which would make us financially second class. Number two, if you look at Roseau, look at the number of Chinese stores. Again, retailing. None of these stores feature
More development.
None of these stores feature products from the soil, from an agro-processing plant, or a factory from Dominica. We're just retailing. We import and we sell at inflated prices to the ordinary Dominican. Some things which you get next to nothing on the international market, you have to pay something for it in Dominica. The quality of the goods are already questionable. We pay a lot for it, and the people who are selling it are dominating Roseau. You walk around Roseau, you see the number of Chinese stores, and they're not just renting right now. And
they're buying the properties.
They are buying the properties. I know of one Chinese lady who already has 4 private properties in the heart of Roseau.
Whoa.
Just one Chinese. One.
Whoa.
Not 2 Chinese, one. No, we're not paying attention to those things because we are looking for the next from the so-called visionary leaders of Dominica. That we're looking for. Whether it's a scholarship for a child, whether some money to send a loved one abroad, whether it's an apartment. No, by no means I from up for people looking for assistance. These people are in a state where they can't help themselves. They are financially crippled. If you're in your 50s, you're in your 60s, you do not have a savings account, you do not have a house of your own, the probability of doing those things on your own, irrespective of a government change, is small.
Yeah.
Or you are destitute, and as such, it is justifiable for you to be running up and down to get a favor from a politician.
And just none of these investment programs are even geared towards developing the poor people, you know. None of them. None of them. I look at the allotted government programs. There's not one agriculture program in there, Josh. There's nothing about water, nothing about alternative energy. None of these programs are geared towards endemic development of native Dominican people. And how are you telling me you have these billions of dollars, and you allocating developmental projects, and none of these projects represent anything endemic to Dominica in terms of development? This is crazy.
Well, again, these guys are not genuine. So, for example, on this platform tonight, has been posting that the government cares about poor people, and probably Zed and Joshua are not standing for poor people.
Bye. What do you mean to you, brother? What do you mean to you? I coming down, man. I come in.
So you
care what people say.
Right. No, Zed, I can use myself as an example, and I'm going to use myself as an example. Not very often I use myself as an example to reflect the past, the current, and the future. I'm going to use myself as an example.
Good example too.
I was raised under this Freedom Party's regime. As a young kid growing up, you know, primary school and high school under the Freedom Party's regime. All right, and college. And during that time, we had no plumbing, none. We were considered to be poor, dirt poor. My grandparents were peasant farmers. I was raised by my grandparents at Loubier. They had gardens at Bellevue. We had to walk from Fobawa Loubier to Bellevue. There were times I had to go to garden and pick up stuff or drop something before I went to school. Struggle, but you know what, Zed? You know what?
Give you character.
I went through high school. I went through the CFO call without once obtaining any assistance from a politician.
Yes.
My grandparents sent me to school. They were able to expand on their one-bedroom house at Loubier over a period of time without getting not one nail from a politician. You understand? So I am a testimony, a living testimony of a poor person child who elevated himself
With good principles.
Perseverance. And that is how I want to see poor people develop themselves. Poor people's children through inspiration, perseverance, commitment, diligence, honesty, make themselves into something. And if along the way you can get assistance to aid your quest of making yourself into something great. But this new Dominica, where politicians, lo and behold, have become controllers of resources and have indoctrinated the poor people to make them think that they need a politician to be king. It is rather unfortunate.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the poor man who's supposed to be rising with Zed Lloyd, rising with Joshua Francis, rising with Honorable Lennox Linton, rising with Loftus Dura, amongst others, are in the group who wants to maintain the status quo. They're actually resisting.
Yes.
The movement to make them better, because you have people like Cleville Mills who puts a veil over their eyes and make them think they're being developed by being given handouts.
Yeah.
You understand? Because a person in his or her 30s has hope of building his or her own house. But in this country called Dominica, when you're in your 30s, you feel like you need a politician because your salary, if you're working, is so small, it's so meager, that you depend on it just for food and to take care of a child or children if you have any. And the balance cannot afford your mortgage. So you have to chase a politician. And Cleville Mills and the labor rights, some of them are not seeing that we have that predicament in Dominica now because we have a government that has failed the people. It has failed.
And I don't think is necessarily for want of trying, you know. You see, the Prime Minister, his mannerism of governance is a major part of the problem, you know. His mannerism of governance is a major part of the problem. It's like he has come to really believe this idea that he is God in Dominica. Literally. You understand? Because I sincerely believe that if this government had a more consultative process to development, if the parliament was being utilized as the parliament is supposed to be utilized, have regular meetings, listen to the opposition, have constructive discussions, involve the people in conversations, talk about the CBI with the people, ask them what projects you think we can use to develop Dominica, where we can spend some money next year on the CBI. If there was a more communicative relationship between the government and the people, I think Dominica would be doing a lot better than it is doing now. We have a prime minister who governs from a posture of arrogance. Arrogance.
Where he can call his own people idiots.
Yeah, just an arrogance, and the people keep allowing that to continue and fester. And Cleville Mills knows it, you know, he's afraid to talk about it in public, but he knows it, he's intelligent enough to know it. You know, it's just some balls he has to grow up. That's what he has to grow, some balls.
But then, check this out. You have a prime minister, and during his tenure, he sends his wife to another jurisdiction to have his children. That tells you where Dominica and Dominicans stand in the man's heart. The man doesn't have confidence in his own country over which he presides.
Real talk.
The ordinary people are there chasing the man and making it appear, painting him as some kind of super politician, some kind of super leader. He's not.
Yeah. And Josh, go ahead, sorry.
It's a sham. It's a sham. And in time, people will appreciate how much waste that occurred under this government for the
Yeah, man, real talk.
waste of resources,
Opportunities for us to be ahead of the world in certain regards.
Because Dominica has potential. This country is laced with water, with clean water. We have not been able to commercialize our water to the point where ordinary people can benefit from such proceeds.
And George, just to cut you short, keep your thought. The water thing, bro, you know what is even worse about the water? It's not even the commercialization, you know. The fact that in Dominica, we have not developed a sustainable method of pure fresh water for our people, you know, bro. Dominicans, you know. You know, they're not even talking about outside, you know, for us as a people, you know, bro. We have not developed, even sat down and have a comprehensive plan, have proper tanks in each village, have a supply. We know we have rain, we know water get dirty, have some system that automatically puts us on a change of water supply. Nothing, we have not invested anything in a better water supply for Dominicans. I mean, that is sad, you know, Josh.
It is.
You know what I mean? That is, and I saw these guys at a meeting this week at Kempinski talking about promoting Dominica as a business package. A business package. We don't even have a Wi-Fi set up in a nation of a couple hundred square miles, bro. We don't even have that. This CDI money, where is it being spent? We don't have proper water supply. We look at cannabis. We should be presenting a package this week at the Kempinski that says we legalizing cannabis. We come in our village tourism, come in our adventurous tourism, talking to a different type of tourist. We here presenting a package that was made for Barbados, that these guys are transplanting into Dominica, and we have no infrastructure for business structure and for people to come and work business in Dominica.
Actually, Barbados is moving into the full legalization of marijuana.
But how you mean this woman thinks?
We have a leader who keeps trying to take credit for leading the Caribbean. It's just like on vaccine diplomacy. He competed with Mia Motley as the leading individual, the leading prime minister in the Caribbean to have vaccine on his island. So he's always out there looking for glorification. But nonetheless, he has failed to focus on how he can really and truly develop Dominica.
Yeah, man, this is joke, man.
This country,
the Rastafarians. But forget about him, Josh. Let's talk about the people and look at this cannabis thing, Josh. Look at this cannabis thing. I really want to personalize that a bit. Look at this cannabis thing. Irving McIntyre is the Minister of Health in Dominica, you know, a cannabis smoker, you know. Irving McIntyre, you know. Colin McIntyre, his brother, is the Minister, good boy, right hand. Okay, get that, you know. Stinky, Linton, Stevenson is the agriculture czar in Dominica, a ganja smoker. Okay, we have Dr. IP, promoting as the medical ethos on the issue of ganja in the country. The opposition leader Lennox is Stevenson's brother. But all Roosevelt Skerritt's right and left hand man is ganja people. And under these guys' watch, you're telling me you're allowing Roosevelt Skerritt in 2021 to come in Dominica and produce some protocol that says about a couple ounces of weed. And we're struggling agriculturally. Cannabis is the most resilient crop for our kind of place as a hurricane-prone country. The way cannabis grows, the height it grows to, the structure of it. There is nothing more resilient to hurricanes that we can be up and running after hurricane than cannabis cultivation. We have a whole bunch of youth sitting on the roadside. You're telling me only man in there, Irving, Stinky, all of you fellas, there is application of responsibility. Roosevelt Skerritt should have gotten fire on that thing of coming and put that nonsense going on Dominican cannabis. No, the man don't get up and speak. So long with as youth, man, we're talking about legalizing cannabis, free up the weed, and make the economic benefit. All you man there in positions of power in Dominica, when Roosevelt Skerritt and his myopic mind and short-sightedness to come and rule on cannabis in Dominica in 2021 in that kind of garbage legislation that was allowed to pass in Dominica. Yeah, man, I forget about the Prime Minister, bro. We, couple of us there individually, bro. We have to rise up. We have to stand up as man with balls and start telling these guys garbage you doing, man, in Dominica. Real talk.
Well, and that continues with planting seeds of enlightenment in every part. I see that you're impassioned, rightfully so, because you understand some of the issues on the island and you really would like a better Dominica. And the followers here want a better Dominica, except Cleville Mills.
Kevin, I know Kevin, man. I know Kevin. Kevin, I want to go anything more often to talk to the Liberites. I don't tell you.
Yeah.
We have to talk to the Liberites. Yeah, man, we have to talk to the Liberites.
Yeah, well, then we are.
It's that time.
The time has gone by real fast. You know, tonight we had a open discussion. And of course,
man.
We are grateful for all those who took some time to stop to say something. We are just here to discuss and to put national issues under the microscope, dissect, analyze, and come to some kind of conclusion as far as the way forward is concerned. And as some people say, until and unless we have a change of government, this country is not going anywhere.
Yeah, man, a change of government and a change of mindset of the people. Mindset of the people, Josh. We have to, because we keep having the argument on the government. We have to also start having the government on the people.
Right.
On the people.
I
because,
agree.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because we need leadership to help massage the minds of the people.
I think the leadership is there, you know. But like I tell you, there is an absence of philosophical vibes in leadership. That is what is missing. We keep reacting to Roosevelt Skerritt. We have to start making Roosevelt Skerritt backstep. It's time for him to start backstepping. We keep reacting to him. We have to. It's time for him to backstep.
Yeah,
you don't have to destroy him. You don't have to hate him. You don't have to keep attacking personally.
We love the brother, you know. We love him.
Yeah. The brother could have excelled. He could have excelled with the money that passed in the Roosevelt and Bridget. You could have been supremo. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Dominica has seen billions over the past 20 years.
You feel me?
And we have something to show for the billions which we collected. Way too little. In 2021, we still do not have any rural development policies per se. We have a few policies written on paper, but as far as the execution of development plans to uplift the quality of lives of people in the rural places in Dominica is non-existent. We saw what happened in Portsmouth. Instead of an expansion, we saw contraction. We saw structural unemployment in Portsmouth because of the departure of Ross University. Unfortunately and regrettably, instead of people stood up against Roosevelt Skerritt, they gave him a bigger mandate in 2019. And type of political behavior that discourages some patriots from leading at the front as far as getting that change in Dominica. It is really frustrating when poor people who are aggrieved or supposed to be aggrieved by an action or inaction of this government stand up with the government and even celebrate the government. It is really, really sad.
Yeah, it is.
In other parts of Dominica, and nothing is happening. You've seen a depopulation in places like Casibros. You see in those communities, basically, they're becoming ghost towns. They're unproductive. A lot of farmers have left the fields. Some of them have traveled. Some of them have invested in bus driving. Some of them, you know, all of a sudden they invoke their carpentry skills and they're looking for a little job somewhere.
Yeah.
You have the original farmers, the younger ones, departing from the fields. You have no economic base, no economic activity taking place in places like Peter Soufriere, Casibros, Bagatelle. So basically, you're seeing a death of these communities.
More dependence.
Right,
more dependence.
More dependence. And that is manifested by the enrollment in primary schools. What we are having in some elementary schools in Dominica, you have less than 30 children enrolled from to grade 6. Some time ago, when I went to Jodel to visit the primary school, I was rather baffled by the small numbers. And why is that happening? Well, of course, people are having less children.
Yeah.
Doubt about it. But you're seeing a depopulation in places, and we do not have a proper census report to give us community assessment of what's happening. But when you have a government which is not sophisticated, which is intellectually bankrupt, a government where you have leaders who are more interested in their pockets than the pockets of its people, then you will find those things happening. Brain drain, high rate of underemployment, high rate of unemployment, lack of productivity, declining exports. The only export that has increased and continues to rise is the sale of our citizenships.
Of our citizenship. And it's not employing us.
Right. Yeah, we're selling our country to foreigners. Foreign companies are coming and taking jobs that ordinary people can do. So you really have a country that is in a problem. And yes,
Josh, I want to ask you a question before we leave. You mentioned that thing about the jobs. Josh,
yes.
how feasible it is for us to is it feasible to go through the court system in terms of a challenge to this the employment protocol of this government? Can we argue for a percentage of natives to construction projects? Is that something that we can argue at the courts?
No, I don't think so. When you're taking a matter to court, you must have a cause of action. In other words,
you must have a cause of action.
Law which the potential defendant has violated, whether it is contracts, whether it's whatever it is, whether it's property. We cannot challenge the government legally on all things. I personally believe we have to continue in hearts and minds. We have to save hearts and minds. And we have to move beyond the political boundaries for us to capture
100%. 100%.
For Dominica. My struggle is not solely for the United Workers' Party. This is bigger than the United Workers' Party.
Dominica.
This is Dominica. This is a country where we need to get up and to save it and take it back. Because if we allow what is happening to continue, our children will not enjoy Dominica.
Real talk.
Is under attack. I mean, of course, Dominica happens to be blessed with very rough terrains, and as such, we cannot traverse in certain areas in the mountains, and therefore our water table is not depleting as quickly. All right? But if we do not take necessary steps to save our rivers, we will see the water volumes keep decreasing, and we'll see the disappearances of a few streams. And in years to come, we will have much less rivers, and God forbid, Dominica gets to a point where we have to depend on bottled water.
Yes, real talk.
We need leaders to understand that the most prized resource we have on this island is our fresh water. And we need to be more serious in the preservation and use of our water, number one. Number two, we need a government to understand the value of the soils. I believe that we have been using way too much chemicals in Dominica.
Way too much. And that Haitian invasion, I love my Haitian folk, but the agricultural practices of Haitian people is detrimental to Dominica's future. They destroy the soil in Haiti through that same chemical process.
Right. You
understand? I'm seeing some sizes of food in the market, man. We have to be worried about these sizes of food. This is GMO food. Mm-hmm. You know, this is straight up G. This is not natural food. You know, so we have to really address this issue of that over influx of chemicals into our agricultural process. But like Stinky and all should be addressing that more. We have to vouch for an organic Dominica, bro. It's going to be unique in that future.
Right. When you have people operating on skeletal intellectual planes, you do not expect them to have this kind of profound discussion and this type of appreciation for the subjects that we have under discussion now. Very few people pay attention to soil management in Dominica, to water management in Dominica. When you think of water, we're just thinking of drinking it. We don't seem to appreciate water in respect to the ecosystem. We don't seem to appreciate water in terms of health, the preservation of the soils of the nation. I mean, see what happened in Martinique, Zed, just on the next side. A whole set of acres, hectares of land were made fallow because the Martinique authorities, the French authorities, after studies, came to the conclusion that there is a positive correlation between the use of chemicals and prostate cancers.
Yeah, man, real talk.
We have the third highest rate of cancer in the whole wide world. And it may very well be that there is a nexus between the chemicals that we use and the number of cancers that we get.
It is. Lupus is on the rise. We have a high prostate thing. Dominica shouldn't have those kinds of statistics, George. We're supposed to be protruding statistics that are looking at us as the health nation of the world. We're supposed to be setting those parameters for us for that kind of tourism. For that kind of tourism. That's what these guys should be coming and talk about at Kempinski. Right. Boy, yo, George, let me stop.
Tonight an open conversation. But of course, usually I have specific topics to deal with. Tonight, with CBI, I can assure you that we have just started the discussion on CBI.
Yeah, man.
CBI discussion must take place in every part of Dominica, every nook and cranny, because the ordinary Dominican needs to understand, that there are a number of questions about the CBI which needs to be answered.
Yes.
And the discussion on the economy must continue because, of course, bread and butter issues must always be a priority in the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah. And Josh, I want to use the opportunity before we end to let the people know that, a lot of the conversations taking place, we have a lot of mails that we're trying to really, tonight, for instance, we're really trying to have a sister on here with us to talk. It didn't materialize, but, I know people are listening. I just know, some sisters out there who really feel to contribute to that whole national dialogue and, come forward, because we need female voices too,
I think we should invite Marcelin.
We need to come forward,
to come forward and participate in the conversations.
And contribute, because we need that that yin and that yang, we need it,
But Zed, I have invited a few sisters. But they cower. They have this.
I know.
They're talented and intellectually gifted, but they fear coming on the broadcast.
Yeah.
There will be some kind of reprisal should they make an appearance on this platform.
Real talk.
Victimization is real in this country.
It's real, man.
So, yes, we have a democracy, but there's a price to pay by your association with certain people in this country. I am one of the few persons in Dominica who is independent. I can go on a Labour Party platform and say something if I want. Of course, that's going to happen because there's a big and vast difference between the ideology of the Dominica Labour Party and my ideology or for what
True.
I will not go in the corner to do.
But we have to reach out to the labor rights.
But I love labor rights.
Yeah, moving forward, we have to have a more proactive and protocol, than the ones we've been following in the past.
I saw Simeon Albert come in here. I don't know whether it's Simeon Albert who's on Kyrie. He said, whatever, talk. Let me tell you, Simeon wants to talk. Who talks more than Simeon? What does he do on Kyrie? He does his Simeon Albert who's on Kyrie.
I wish he would actually interview Senior Council instead of just, man, this brother, oh my God. I wish this brother would just, you see this brother had some depth. He could have such an interesting conversation with the Senior Council, man, but this guy is a joke.
Yeah, but he has improved a lot. I have listened to him a few times.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I want to commend you for your improvements, and I hope you keep improving both in your oratory skills and the substance which you bring forth on the radio. Because
that's great.
That you have a listenership and you have some level of influence. I do not know how deep it is, but it's always good to sharpen your scholarly skills because when you go on these public platforms, you have a moral responsibility to speak a language to uplift the minds.
Exactly.
Listen to you. Unfortunately, a lot of times when I listen to those guys' programs, it is more bringing down people who disagree with them as opposed to lifting the nation. Here on this broadcast, you definitely will not get Joshua Francis, and probably Zach can speak for himself.
We don't do the personal, man.
I'm not in that. It's so uplift the man, not to try to bring him down.
He was scared with critic and we still gave his props. You know, he's done some good. You know, we ain't coming here trying to say he's all bad.
Yeah, certainly. Well, before I put on the curtain on this evening's broadcast, I just want to read one or two more comments because, as you know, we want to interact.
Exactly.
Followers. My secret is in Chilling 40 said Dominica belongs to all of us. I, as a people, letting one man share our country breed. Well, Curtin Shilling Ford, the nation will get an opportunity at the next general elections to decide who they continue to lead them. And you have a responsibility to help your neighbor understand why we need a change in Dominica.
Sure.
Clevin Mills, Joshua, like Lennox, are trying to choke the revenue from CPI. So you see what Clevin Mills' mind is? He's just picking up with dollar and cents. He does not concern himself with the of the nation as far as the numbers, indigenous people or local people versus economic citizens. He doesn't care about transparency and accountability in public office. He does not care about the integrity of our democracy. He does not care about oppression from contractual terms handed over to MMCE. He does not care about our laws. All he cares about is the revenue. And if he really and truly understand what he cares about, he would even question the CBI issue because he would understand that the revenues which eventually permeate or infiltrate in our economy could be more.
Much more.
The MMC and the government of Dominica be truthful to the people. So, Clevin Mills, you're concerned about the revenue. I will say to you, do some research. Do some research and you'll come to understand that the very thing you're concerned about is not being managed properly for the benefit of Dominica. And Viva Mamo added to Josh, let me see what's there. I'm not quite, I probably put it on the screen. He's saying, and apportioning a certain percentage of labor for locals. This is not supported by multilateral institutions in the current global dispensation of free trade and opening competitive markets. The public procurement rules of the World Bank may not even allow this, hence the difficulty of a government implementing this. A company in the private sector could facilitate this. In fact, where unions represent construction workers, this is usually a clause forced on large contractors. I think that was in response to an issue you raised.
Yes. How we can only approach that.
Right, so we want to thank Viva Mamo for his work. Learned and concise response to your question. And Marcelin Edwards, she says, thanks for the invite because we said on the next program, we should bring in Marcelin to share her views. As you know, she's a very sharp person and she has a contribution to make. And I see Ezra Winston, he said, words of truth. I guess he's responded or has responded to one of the statements which we made. Clevin Mills, so you agree to this, your objective is to whatever the revenue. And Teresa Susanna Rowe, Simeon, why insult the gentleman on your program? we are not offended. If it is very Simeon Albert that's out there, brother, at least he stopped by on the broadcast. We just have love for him. Love for brother.
Yeah, man, we ain't in the personal thing, man.
Right.
We're good.
Yeah.
I just want Simeon to start being more objective as an interviewer on this program. That's all.
Right, definitely. Well, and good evening, Teresa. Let us, the listeners, the followers who are still on the broadcast, we want to urge you to share the broadcast, you know, so that other persons who did not have the benefit of listening tonight will look at it.
Can view.
Point. But this is just a movement. This is a movement, of course. This is an electronic or social media platform. I am part of movements on the ground in assisting Dominicans to understand what's happening. Because
and I want to say for myself, Yes, I am here in New York, but I am very much in Dominica. I am involved on the ground, much more than people may think.
Right. All right. Well, then I want to thank you for being here this evening.
Yes, brother. Thank you.
If there's any closing remark you want to make before we cool things down, go ahead.
I want to thank those who stayed with us this Sunday evening. It means there's some patriots out there. The numbers are nice. I really like to see that. And spread the word. Sunday evenings, gather around. Let's talk. Let's talk an objective talk. Let's invite across the lines. Come through, make your comment, labor or whatever you are. It doesn't matter. Let's talk about Dominica. I think we've been stuck in too many camps for too long, and it's advantageous to the incumbent government. He says, everybody come into the ring, come into the ring. It's the political ring that he has structured that he always wins. We want to come differently this time around. We want to come on the issues, not in the ring. Thank you.
Well, Zed, thank you for coming here to contend for Dominica. This is what this broadcast is about. We are contending for Dominica. And in contending for Dominica, we stand for truth, we stand for righteousness, we stand for anything that is good, anything that is sound, anything that is positive. And we stand against anything sound, unreasonable, oppressive, to the people, short-sighted, anything that is corrupt, we stand against it. On this broadcast, we do not hold any special favor for any one party. This is about when the party does well, it will be credited. When it will be discredited. And likewise, the opposition. We are here to contend for Dominica. So I want to thank you. It is the 21st of March, 2021. It is now 10:28 in the Commonwealth of Dominica and on the eastern border of the United States of America and Canada. We invite you to join us next Sunday from 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
If you're able to make it, I will make it known unto you because, as you know, as an attorney, I have to prepare for cases, and sometimes my work may take me out of this platform. But when that is the case, I'll make it known unto you. Until such time, thank you for being here. Teresa, continue to be strong. I know that your sister is not well. I want to urge you to be courageous and be strong always. And I also want to thank you all for expressing your sincere condolences to me, to myself, to my family and I, on the passing of my sister, who will be buried on Friday. We want to thank you and just thanks for the prayers and the support. And for all those of you who have been praying for me over the years and supporting Joshua Francis as a politician, as an attorney, as an individual, I want to thank you. All right, as long as God gives me life, I will continue to stand with you, by you, and for you. The purpose of my life basically is to help contribute to a better Dominica, better people, happier people, a healthier nation. So until such time, we just want to say good night. Let me just say good night quickly to Chris Bugunu, always there with us. We want to thank you, brother.
Sure.
And we want to urge you to do what you're doing. And everybody else, let us hope we have a beautiful week. And David Joseph, we want to thank you for starting for tonight. And New Jules, we want to thank you. Let us hope all of us on the broadcast, our friends or relatives, will have a great, productive, and healthy week. Zed, I hope you enjoy yourself this week, whatever you do.
Yeah, man. God bless. God bless. Trying to walk in that Christness, you know?
Keep doing it, my brother. I mean, in the Lent season, you have to do your praying, your fasting.
Yeah, man. You have to do your 40 days and 40 nights. It's so good.
And you have to stay away from the pork, brother.
Yeah. One love, brother. God bless. Have a good week.
All right, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, let's just do that here to an end.
One love.
Yep.
Bania, and Peter, kiss her.